Good evening. I'm Paul. This is Dave. I'm a beer enthusiast, and Dave here is a home brewer and beer judge. And this evening we have brought to you a beer called Lolita, Belgian Wild Style Ale by Goose Island. And I want to say that I picked this out mainly, honestly, because boring bottle labels. Oh, can we get that with the lighting here? There we go. Boring bottle labels have proven to be very successful as far as beers that I like.
I'm really excited about this. The style, it's a Belgian ale. I'm a big fan of some of the framboise that have the sourness to them. So this is a Belgian style wild yeast, which can mean quite a bit when it comes to the character and the yeasty characteristics of the beer. So I'm hoping maybe something like it's maybe a little bit more saison-ish. Supposedly it's not soured with the raspberries, but it actually is just set on the raspberries. So it's pulling some of this tartness off of it. So I'm kind of excited about what it might be. Anytime it says wild, I'm in.
I just looked at it and went, this looks interesting and new, and that's really what the beer channel is all about to the two of us, is interesting and new beers. And like I said, I've come to find that the plainer the label, the more interesting the beer is. But we'll see. This particular product is from Goose Island, and they're out of Chicago. They've been around since '88, and they were acquired by Anheuser-Busch in 2011. This is a 8.7% beer. When we looked this up, Dave was getting beside himself at the prospect of it. This is actually aged in wine barrels, and this particular beer is aged on raspberries. It's not brewed with raspberries as part of the fermentation. It's just aged on the raspberries, as far as we can understand.
One of the things I'm smelling right away is the wild yeast.
Oh yeah, it's there.
So a couple things that you find with a lot of Belgian ales is one, wild yeast. So let's talk a little bit about that. Is what you end up with is, if you go far enough back in time, which a lot of these traditional styles were developed through regions way back in time. So be it a bock or an ale or lots of different kind of places. You would have different kinds of beers because the yeast in the area were a specific kind and just made good beer. So when they say wild, and usually Belgian style wild, it's going to have some characteristic to it because it's going to be not something that was just completely built for a specific style or built to be clean. It's going to give you lots of different kind of characteristics to it. The other part of this is what's really common with a lot of Belgian styles is that they have bacteria that is also wild, like the yeast, that'll be part of the same mix.
Yeah,
so
there is some
Brettanomyces and
there's some bitter off flavors in this that I'm picking up.
Yeah.
And part of it's the raspberries, don't get me wrong. The raspberries are very prominent. This is actually a really good beer. This is kind of beer I would definitely enjoy one or two of at the beginning of the evening. Not something I would drink all night so far.
Yeah, this is kind of like what we were doing before with some of these winter warmers and the triples. It's a treat. It's like that nice bottle of wine that you get because you want an experience with that wine.
This is a very unique flavor.
I get kind of excited about the microbiological level of it because there's wild bacteria, Brettanomyces, lactobacillus, possibly other kinds of wild yeast, things like that you may not taste, so it's new to your palate to kind of create some cool characteristics. Plus, I think they put it in a wine barrel, so they age it a little bit. It gets its time to kind of come in and out of the oak, which is when you wine or barrel age something.
Yeah, it helps the flavors. It creates more tannins in the flavors. It also creates a certain tartness to it, I want to say.
Almost like a tanniny.
Yeah. It creates a different flavor than just letting it ferment bottle or letting it ferment, putting it in the cask or the keg or whatever, the actual organic process of the beer or the wine or the whiskey or anything else that they age in any wooden cask is going to create its own unique flavors in this.
Yeah, so what'll happen is that as the temperature fluctuates, it soaks in and then comes out of the oak. And that process kind of leaches some of that tanniny type flavors, create a little bit of dryness to it. There's a lot of character that you'll get out of aging something in a barrel.
This is on the dry side. This is also like not a carbonation centric kind of thing. The carbonation's there, but I think it's necessary. If this beer were flat, it would not be nearly as palatable. I can definitely tell the raspberries because they aged on the raspberries. That flavor is prominent.
Yeah.
That is the top flavor. That's the first thing you're going to notice.
So I was smelling a lot of the wild yeast, and then I tasted it, and I'm tasting the tartness to it. It has that raspberry tartness, something you would find like in a framboise, but it would be a mild framboise. So what I really like about that is sometimes your framboises can be almost so tart and so sour.
Oh, yeah, they're almost undrinkable.
Well, I mean, maybe to you, but but if you're a sour beer fan, like you're looking for that, this is great because this leaves room for other things that you can taste. Yeah. So I'm tasting that sourness, I'm tasting that tartness to it,
the malt's
but I'm also tasting
there.
quite a bit of that, the wildness to it with the wild yeast. There's some really cool characteristics that I'm picking up there. And the maltness, the sweetness of the malt.
The malts are there. It's very crisp, so the beer doesn't really linger. There's not a huge aftertaste with it. And like I said, it is very dry, though. But it's this is a pleasant beer.
Yeah, definitely dry.
I got to be honest, Dave had much higher hopes and expectations than I did. I was just kind of like, Chicago, Illinois, there aren't a whole lot of beer snobby hipster people known to be in Chicago. And, well, I guess I'm being proven wrong. So
yeah, and this is it's a company that I think originally founded in 1988, was acquired by Anheuser-Busch
in 11.
Yeah, in 2011, 8.7% alcohol, IBU 32. IBU is a tiny bit higher than some of the session beers that we've been having, but not bitter, not in any way.
You're not going to taste the hops in this one. I'm barely able to taste any presence of hops over the raspberry.
Yeah, the raspberry is so forward. You can pick up some of the malt in it, but the wild yeast and the raspberries is what this is all about. This is quite a treat.
It's got a nice color. It's coming up there actually pretty well.
And not a clear beer.
No, this is cloudy. There is no clarity in this beer at all.
The cloudiness is because this is a mix of wild yeast. It's a mix of possibly different kinds of bacteria that might be growing, not in a bad way, in a good way. So these are things that really make things really, really great. I can think of a handful of people who would absolutely cherish sitting down and enjoying this.
Yeah.
So especially if you're a sour beer person, I might have to forward this out to a few people that I know that I think they would love this.
This is one of those things that you want to sit down before you've been drinking and enjoy the bottle and then move on to something else. Because it's like I was drinking some scotch last night with another friend of mine, and I'm like, this is a fantastic scotch. It's not too expensive. It was called Belgian Double Cask. I really like the stuff. I got a bottle of it home myself. But it's one of those things, when it comes to really good scotch or really good wine, you want to drink it before you actually get a couple in. You want them to be your first ones because you're going to lose the flavor, the appreciation. as you drink more. It's just a byproduct of, drinking.
Yeah. So, and I love the fact they put this in a bottle like this, because you wouldn't buy a 6-pack of this as a beer.
Oh, I wouldn't.
So you wouldn't even use this like you would normally use a beer. Like if you wanted a 6-pack of beer, you're going out with your friends and you're going to have some drinks. Completely different experience than having something like this. This is like picking up a bottle of champagne, maybe picking up a nice bottle of wine, or picking up something like this
bottle costs
that would give you a unique experience.
This bottle costs about $20 by the time I paid for tax and everything. So it's not a cheap product, but this is...
It's complex. It's really...
It's nice.
I love the smells on it, which I know they're coming from those wild yeast. It's real estery.
Yeah.
It's really hard to like describe until you've actually experienced it. But you're picking up some of the maltness to it.
The yeast and the malt are there, but they're so subdued to the raspberry to me. And I've only had like a couple raspberry beers, and they're one of those things that I really enjoy, but I'm ready to move on after the fact.
Yeah, if you've ever had a Saison, this is obviously not as much as a Saison would be, but it has some characteristics of what that would be like. Possibly some of the wild yeast that kind of creates a little bit of that character, where it has almost like a mustiness to it. And the best way that I describe it is that if you like cheese, and then you have like goat cheese, right? Goat cheese has almost a gaminess to it. This is like the version of gaminess for yeast. It has a different characteristic to it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more earthy. It's a little bit more musty. It really kind of, especially with the tartness and the sourness, it goes really, really well. And that's why a lot of these styles will lean towards things like cherries or raspberries.
Yeah,
You'll see something along those lines that are really, really tart.
I almost bought. They have a peach and they have a cherry, and I almost got the cherry. And I'm kind of curious actually to try the cherry. I just knew that cherry can be unexpectedly tart, just like a cherry can be unexpectedly sweet. And I knew with raspberries I was going to get a certain tart level with it. So
it really opens up really well too. After it warms up a little bit, and you smell it. Oh, wow.
By the way, after reading up on this, he was stupid excited to try it.
I'm excited the fact that, like, I know I've had a lot of different Belgian beers kind of going through the years of getting a chance to try them. And each one of them is a wild experience. They're different. They're not like drinking a normal beer. They're the same ingredients, but what wild yeast and what the wild bacteria do to the actual beer, it creates a different kind of experience to it. And I would tell you that if you picked up this bottle, you would get that experience. Maybe not as extreme as one versus the other, but this is a great blend of, the wild yeast, the sourness. If you like sour beers, if you know what kind of that style is.
Yeah, if you're the kind of person who likes sour candies, if you're the kind of person that will suck on a lemon because you enjoy it. And I know lots of people that do that. They'll slice up a lemon and eat the lemon. So this is definitely the kind of beer that would be right up that person's alley.
Yeah, and if this is an experience you've never had before, I highly encourage you to go out and try. This would be a great example to do it, because this is probably not so over the top that you would be put off by it. This would be a good experience to give you a good taste of what is it like to have a sour beer and to have some of the wild yeast experience.
Yeah, this would be like if you had never done any of that kind of thing, I would say sit down with 3 or 4 other people who are like-minded or open-minded to try it, because to be honest, this beer, I could see a lot of people hating it.
I can see that, yeah.
I could really honestly see a lot of people hating it. And if you buy this bottle and you crack it open and you pour one off and you're like, oh my gosh, that's disgusting. Well, there you are. You're out $20 bottle of beer, which isn't really that big a deal, but now you got a bottle of beer you got to dump out. But if you've got a couple other people and one of them really likes it and you don't, they can drink your share, waste not,
Yeah.
want not. And as far as I'm concerned, I've said to many people, hey, you don't like IPAs, I don't like stouts, we'll drink each other's share. I mean...
Yeah, so this would be, if you're a regular, let's say average beer drinker, and you're looking for an experience, this might be a little over the top for you. If you're a person looking for an experience and you're willing to kind of go outside of that comfort zone, I wouldn't try to imagine this like it's a beer as much as you imagine it that it's something
it's more
unique
like a
all to
champagne
itself.
or a wine in a lot of ways to me.
At some level, except
really
it's not
reminds me of
obviously
those
wine
things. Yeah,
in any way. But yeah, it is certainly unique. It'll give you a unique experience. One of my favorite types of styles. Like I really, really enjoy these kind of beers, mainly because probably I'm keyed into a lot of the smells, what I'm looking for, and I'm finding them.
Bold, it's in your face, it grabs you, grabs your attention right away.
Absolutely. Gosh, I'm so in love with this beer. And I'm spilling it.
Don't spill. That's
I'm gonna
just
put
not okay.
I'm gonna probably be up there with about a 9 on the presentation. I might even say 9.5. And one of the reasons why normally I'm looking for something with a little bit more clarity or maybe a little bit more head to it, but because of what this beer is, it is really focused around the smell of it. And it fulfills me from that smell. It tells me this is what it's going to be. So it does everything that I want from that experience, even though I might rank something that's completely different, clearer, with more head and stuff like that on a higher level, because that's also presenting itself really well. So I'm going to present it really high.
I'm going to put this beer at about an 8 myself. It doesn't have a lot of the characteristics that most beers have that make me go goo goo gaga, jewel, what have you. It's definitely a unique product. I knew that going in. It's just so unique. I can't really give it like a really great score on that. It does smell fantastic. It does look good in the glass. It really does. And, the head, like this kind of beer, you're not going to get a good head. You're not going to get, a lot of those things that people want. So that's why I'm at an 8, because when I think of beer, there's certain things I think of. That's just where I'm at. But it does smell well, smell good. It does have a lot of, it is appealing to look at. We'll put it that way.
From a taste standpoint, I'm going to put it up at a 9.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm gonna have this one at an 8 as well. And it's just because I don't appreciate the tart levels of things that this has. Because this is very tart, and I almost have to be in a mood for it, but at the same time, I really enjoy the difference, like the change in direction.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me when we were trying some of those winter warmers or some of those triples.
Yeah.
Where it just, out of the blue, it kind of hits you with like, this is beer, but it's not really beer. Like it's the same ingredients as beer. You call it beer, but the type of experience you get from it, so unique. I mean, it almost reminds me of someone who's like, hey, is this mead a beer? Different experience from beer completely.
Or even the cider we did, the original Sin cider. I gave that to a friend of mine, and he tasted it. He was like, oh my gosh, that's freaking amazing. That's like an ale cider. And he's like, most ciders are just disgusting and sweet. So this is an entirely different thing.
I would say if you're a cider person, if you like that tartness of a cider, you might really, if your palate is leaning that direction, this might be a really good alternative to it.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be certainly unique to it, but I'm glad that you brought up a cider. Overall impression, you know what? I love this style. So, I mean, overall impression and personal preference, I'm going to go 9.5 in an overall impression because I think they do a great job for a commercial example here.
Oh yeah,
I mean, this is
one thing
not,
that's amazing. This is a commercial example.
this is not like, hey, monks brewed this and they only brew 100 and, you know, the Pope personally blesses each bottle going out. This is not the case. This is brewed commercially. You could pick it up at probably most places that have,
Yeah, I picked this up.
you know, fine beers and things like that. And the fact that it turns out so well is super impressive to me. So 9.5. I'm going to go 10 on a personal preference because
Really?
this is...
You like it that much?
It really comes down to, for me, I'm looking at the style.
Yeah.
And this style, if I had this as an option as a style,
You're taking it.
I'm going to choose this. I'm going to choose this right up there with some of my top 10 beers. Now, I don't know if this would be the best of, you know, the sour beers that I have. I've had some phenomenal sour beers. But the reality is, most of the time I go into a restaurant, you might have one sour beer as an option. I'm probably going to choose that sour beer if it shows up. And I'll choose it unless there's like a triple or something that's really impressive that's out there. Otherwise, I'm going to probably go with an old standard. And the old standard, you know, is an old standard kind of thing.
Well, my overall impression of this beer is actually pretty high. I'm going to go with a 9.5 on that one as well. It is a well-made product. It is not overbearing in any one direction aside from the fact that it is a sour and, you know, that it is what it is. As far as my personal preference, I'd probably put this about, I'm going to put this about a 7.5. And the reason being is I don't personally really want more than like 2 of these. And if I want a beer that I'm going to lean on a lot, I'm going to want something that I'm going to want more than 2 of before I'm like, okay, it's time to move on kind of thing. But
I don't even know if there needs to be anything beyond it, personally.
Boring bottle labels, guys. Boring bottle labels. That's all I can say. Look for that because so far the beers I've been most impressed by, bottle labels were boring. So
yeah, very legitimate. You know, I encourage you guys, go out there, pick up a bottle of this. This is a great example for something that's very commercially available. It's going to give you a great taste of what is a Belgian beer. You hear about it. You have people that go on and on and on about it. Get a chance to kind of test it out and see, is this something for me?
This is a great example of a sour too.
Yeah.
This really is. And as far as a fruit beer is concerned, it's actually not a bad example of a fruit beer either.
Yeah.
So
I'm impressed with what they've done, especially in something that's done commercially. Most of the time, big commercial beers just let you down. I think this is not that example. I think that you would be impressed with it. I think that if you're experimental in regards to what you're trying to try and have a drink of, this would be a tremendous experience for someone new to this kind of a style.
Have a good evening. Cheers-ish. Dave still got some. And please like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what your thoughts are. If you've had it, if you think we should try a different beer, different sour, what have you.
If you guys like sours, tell me about it. I would love to hear some examples because this is one of my more favorite beers.
And this is his first time trying it, honestly.
Yeah, this is, I mean, styles, I've had it before, but when it comes to this beer, this is certainly the first one. I would love to hear what your experience is with this, if you've had it. And if you have some examples that you want us to try, I'd love to try to convince Paul to have a few more sours.
I'm in for whatever. That's what this channel's about. Anyway, good evening.
Thanks for tuning in.